Gaming is a broad range that contains true works of art to straight up scams and the pure degeneracy, but amongst it, there is this little spot right here that is tactical shooters, which are more catered to people who either want to enjoy a more difficult shooter with more of an attention to historical accuracy to fully immerse themselves in the history, and it can also contain the people who swear if they got deployed they'd have the whole Middle East situation sorted in 5 minutes, but some are better than others, and that is why we're going to be putting them on a totally not stolen video idea, which is the ultimate tactical shooter tier list. It will be primarily focused on how fun they are, and I do knock a few points here and there depending on who the developers are, but quite frankly, I'm not a very serious guy, which is what multiple women have told me, so I gotta roll with it. But the term fun isn't something many tactical shooter players have in their vocabulary, or they have a very warped definition of it. But nonetheless, I now present you the ultimate tactical shooter tier list. Starting off strong with a well-renowned World War II shooter, and that is Hell Let Loose. The premise: spawn in, run, shoot, witness a group of your mates get obliterated, die to a sniper,
fuck me,
rinse and repeat. The great things about this game is that it isn't too intense like others on the list, and it maintains very basic mechanics such as you don't need to manage stamina, the weapons are very accurate. The weapons are very accurate and you don't need thought on your playstyle, but this does cause it to have somewhat of an identity crisis. Why I say this? Well, it markets itself as this brutal tactical shooter on the scale of its competitors, but it lacks one of the most fundamental things that make the others work, and that's the thing right in front of me that I burped into. But people rarely communicate, and this is a problem for several reasons. The first is people think they can go off and do their own thing, causing several meltdowns in command chat, which I'm gonna be brutally honest, it is funny at first, but when you have multiple grown men yelling over who has to build the Gary like a couple that has fallen out of love as you're in the process of getting obliterated in a tank, it does become frustrating. But it also takes away that immersion you usually get in its competitor like Squad 44. There's just something magical about working as a competent team, trying to lock down an area and move together. And I'm gonna be honest, it's severely lacking in Hell Let Loose. But all these things do appeal to a more casual audience who just want to hop in, run around for a bit and shoot stuff. And there's also the fact that dying is practically no penalty. Sure, it reduces manpower, but how many times has that ever been a problem? Because why wait for a medic when you can just give up and gamble hoping the spawn points are nearly ready to deploy? But on the positive, the game looks great and you have some truly remarkable moments of people getting obliterated or trying to hold on to a point as artillery is battering down. Heck, the only reason why I still have this game installed is because of the tanking. Despite absolutely hating the tank physics, such as getting a recon tank stuck on a little mound, or some trees are solid and some are not.
Oh, I'm fucking...
oh, for fuck's sakes.
There's just something so satisfying about leading a tank squad and valiantly holding down a push as one of your many teammates near you go blind, deaf and dumb and let you get satcheled. But another big issue with this game, and the reason why I will be putting it in a tier lower than its competitor, is purely because of Team 17. Just ask yourself, when was the last time there was anything meaningful added to this game? You had the crappy out of place skirmish game mode that I've never played, because why would I subject myself to 350 ping when I can just play the game as intended with a 50 ping server in Australia? I also love how people had a meltdown and called Squad a skin cash cow, despite Hell Let Loose going a step further and releasing map locked haircuts for an insulting price, redesigning, mind you, the perfectly normal and functional character creation for one that promotes said skins, or the fact that they broke but thankfully fixed the server browser and all I could see were Chinese servers because the sort by ping function was broken, or the fact they didn't have a QA team to even check that the bridge on Carrington was in an acceptable state. I also can't forget, this is the biggest sin that they've committed, and as a tank main, this is just absolutely despicable. But they nerfed the Panther reload speed, just disgusting. This once absolutely feared tank is essentially just the same as every other heavy tank in the game, which is just completely stupid. But moving on, I understand that I went on a bit of a rant, but the truth is, it is a fun game to hop in, score some kills, get blown up. It's a simple tactical shooter because it's a fun, great game in my opinion, no matter how many people will have this elitism and say like, oh, it's not a true tactical shooter. Purely because of Team 17, I'm gonna be putting it B tier.
We've taken a German opening!
But moving on, I totally didn't choose the next game to start a flame war in the comments. Oh, just how terrible would it be for the engagement rate of this video, but that is Squad 44, a game that was born, died, and then was given mouth to mouth by OWI to resuscitate it to some semblance of back to life. But it's on the side of a more hardcore tactical shooter, and I really enjoy it because it isn't that much of a running sim, and the guns are so satisfying to shoot, especially the snipers. It has beautiful sound design, people on mics making attacking a point feel so much more immersive and involved in the sense that you feel like you're part of a cooperative squad trying to win the war. The bad aspects of this game, and I'm not going to hold my tongue anymore, I'm sick of pretending and trying to find reason in this mechanic, so I'm just going to say it. It's the canteen. I know why it's there and I know its purpose, but oh my god, it's such a slog. Because if we look at Hell Let Loose, it's not a request, but a mandate to build nodes. Otherwise, you're going to have a bad time. Same thing with the canteen, it's non-negotiable. You will drink your meth-laced water so you can run a couple hundred meters. I've had heaps of fun with Squad 44 though and met some great people from it, and quite frankly, this was recommended to me by a mate and I thought,
it's the biggest piece of dog shit.
But I eventually warmed up to it and stopped trying to play it like RS2. Now, when it comes to the developers, I actually look at this game with hope. Similar to when Hell Let Loose dropped their roadmap years ago, and I'm like, whoa, we're gonna get France in 1 year. But of course, some things aren't meant to be. But I just think it's great we're finally gonna get a shooter other than Rising Storm 1 and Enlisted, if you want to call it a tactical shooter set in the Pacific. I just hope they do it right, because if they fumble it, it's going straight to F tier. But at the moment, it's gonna sit in a cozy A tier.
A date which will live in infamy.
But moving on, we have the son of a game that is considered the father of tactical shooters on a large multiplayer scale. Whether this game supersedes its father's legacy is a whole other thing, and that is Squad. What is there not to love about this game? Growing up, I always wanted a game close-ish to what being a real soldier in an action movie is like, with tanks sent on a large scale, and to an extent, Squad delivers on that whilst also retaining my intention compared to even more grander and real mill sim-like games such as Arma. The good things about this game is that despite being a pretty old game at this point, Squad looks good. You have to be smarter about your positioning, because if you run around like it's Battlefield, you're wasting you and everybody's time, and also the fact that your gun handles much more inaccurately compared to other games on this list, which is a controversial thing about this game, but some popular mods have tried to find a sweet spot between old and new Squad. Speaking of modding, who doesn't love it? I love it especially. Let's not get into my Nexus mods list.
Oh my god! Oh my god! I have a disease, alright? I need help!
But you have freaking Star Wars, which I am more of a Star Trek enjoyer, if I'm going to be honest, and I still don't know who the good or the bad guys are in Star Wars, but you have modern conflicts and even attack helicopters, which is something slowly being dabbled with in the base game. Oh, and I can't forget the majority of the time, you have people that are actually willing to communicate, coordinate, and conquer, so not false advertising. And while there are boring moments where you are put on building duty, you do have some awesome moments of attacking a point and trying to work together to move as a unit. However, obligatory, if you make a squad then immediately leave it, then I hate you tremendously, because the thing is, I always rush into a newly made squad just so I can snag a good role, usually the sniper role, and then I'm ending up as squad leader and I have to do the awkward speech of like, hey, the guy left, does anyone want to take up the role? Because if I am the squad leader, I'll probably have a mental breakdown and I will be terrible. And then usually people, I don't even know what people say, but then I just leave the squad because I'm like, I'm not taking responsibility for it, and then I join another squad and steal the sniper role. But that is one of the most annoying things about this game. But the reason why I like squads so much is if I get an itch to play a tactical shooter with coordination, but not on an armor scale, but more than hell let loose set in the modern times, then honestly squad, you can't go wrong with it, especially with modern graphics. Because sure, there is Project Reality, which will be discussed, but Squad is just a fantastic game. It's fun and I enjoy it, and I've even managed to swindle my close casual mates into playing it and they enjoy it as well. That's totally not a lie, and I'm not holding a gun to their head, but that's why this game is going to be put in S tier. But the next game on the list, I have hundreds of hours in, but I actually haven't played more than 20 hours in multiplayer. This game defies the rules in the sense there is no right way to play it, but it'll cater to almost anyone who likes tactical shooters or games like Second Life.
Hey, settle down, okay?
You told me to settle down or go and kill your mom.
That is none other than Arma 3. How I like to play it: put down a couple of assets, install a couple of mods, and bomb them. And even get into a dogfight or two. I am not kidding when I say I've done this for over 100 hours, over a couple years. And that's the beauty of this game, because you can create a co-op experience for you and your mates to just mess around in. You can play it on a massive consistent war with all the tacticalness like your favorite YouTubers such as Karma Cut or Operator Drewski, even though that's not how I personally enjoy it, but it doesn't matter because I play it the way I enjoy it, they play it the way they enjoy it, and everybody wins. And of course, you can even play it on a real life server and get absolutely abused, and coupled with the fact this game implements a lot of realistic elements to it, such as bullet penetration and drop off, you can install even more realism based mods. And this game, despite being over 10 years old, has had fake footage of the war in Eastern Europe passed off as if it was real.
This one is literally Arma 3. It's fake. It's Arma. Oh, god damn it! I hate it!
Now, Arma is S tier, like we're not going to even have a discussion about it. I mean, the worst thing about this game is just the absolute dog tier performance. Oh, you spent $5,000 on a NASA computer? Congratulations, you can now run it above 40 FPS consistently. This leads me onto Arma Reforger, which I will group it together, but I won't be giving it a rating at the moment. But it has seen tremendous transformations over the couple of years, especially with the abundance of mods, including a Vietnam War one. It looks and runs so much better than Arma 3, and while I was harsh on Reforger, I still hold on to my initial criticisms of the servers sucking, the price being too high for a very bare bones product at release that pretty much decimated the Australian server population. But it's fantastic to see the development both from the devs and the modders over the years, and honestly, I think we're in for a real treat when Arma 4 releases, in which I hope the map editor is more like Arma 3 and not Reforger, because the Reforger one sucks. I also have to acknowledge the OG games such as Operation Flashpoint. I've heard nothing but great things about those games, and I do intend on making a video on them in the future. Oh, also Arma 3 has a campaign, but you know, no one really gives a shit about it. But S tier, just hours of fun no matter how you intend to play it. The next games, I have bunched them up, and while they are in a high tier, two of them are doing the heavy lifting for the modern version, and that is none other than the SWAT series and Ready or Not. SWAT 3 released in 1999, and since I was born in 2001, I look at these graphics and think someone has smeared Vaseline on my monitor, but I have to credit the incredible AI. They are so smart and can do things really tactically by covering all the corners when you breach, and you don't need to micromanage them as much such as in these games. I also can't forget the banging soundtrack this game has. I always feel like the games in the 90s had these really intense intros. Even the Resident Evil one, I still get so hyped up to play it, even though the gameplay and voice acting looks like this.
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right.
But staying on topic, getting it to run on a modern system is just an absolute pain. But SWAT 4 released a couple years later with updated graphics, but they did dilute it in some areas, especially with the removal of the dynamic and stealth mode you can toggle between depending on your playstyle. But SWAT 4 just has some incredible moments that I've said multiple times on this channel, but also the fact that the maps are just much smaller, I'd say on average, compared to Ready or Not, and it doesn't feel as tedious to play. Now, Ready or Not, despite all the shit that I've thrown at it and all the controversies and problems, saying I didn't get my money's worth out of it is straight up a lie.
We're a bit flaccid down here, buddy.
It is sleek, modern graphics that are just beautiful. The guns sound beefy and so satisfying to fire. Getting into a gunfight as well, it just all hell breaks loose. But the question I propose to you, and full transparency, it's a stupid one. Would you rather great looks but a bland personality, or mid looks that can be improved on but not by a whole lot, but with a great personality? Now, to be perfectly honest, on a night out, I'd take great looks, but for long term, I'd take the great personality and enhance it with mods, if you can kinda understand what I mean by it. But Ready or Not feels more chaotic because the enemy AI is much more aggressive with little variation. For example, SWAT 4, most suspects are willing to comply, but it can be impacted by the morality mechanic, and it ranges depending on the level. Most of the suspects on this level, who are drug addicts, are more willing to comply, but the ringleader is much harder to take down, and she's very reluctant to actually comply or even go down if you tase her, and this is purely because of her backstory. And another example is terrorists that have stormed a hospital and are ready to die. They know what they've done and they know they are leaving in a body bag. Now, in Ready or Not, you don't get that variation since they're all hyper aggressive from the get-go. But all of these games are just tremendously fun, even though SWAT 3 is extremely dated, and I do recommend SWAT 4 over it, but you know, you'll still have those people that'll vehemently say like, no, SWAT 3 is the superior game out of all of these, and me comparing it to them or putting them on the same scale is just an insult, but it's my damn tier list, so I'll do what I want. But that is why I'm going to be putting the SWAT and Ready or Not series games in A tier. But up until this point, we've talked about some really respectable games that all of us love. But now we're going to move on to a game no one likes. And I have a serious question to the people that play this consistently. Do you hate yourself? I know a couple of phone numbers that you can call for help. And it's the pinnacle of Stockholm Syndrome, and that is Escape from Tarkov. Right off the bat, we can't not mention the Unheard Edition fiasco, which not only spat in the face of people who spent $150 on this game years ago to help out these guys with a vote of confidence, just for Nikita to pick you up and shake you like Mr. Krabs. I can't forget the fact that the amount of cheaters in this game is enough to have scientific research papers on how to absolutely mismanage a game. And do they bother sorting out these cheaters? No, they go and release a PvE game mode, which you do have to pay money for, except if you did pay for the higher tier or the Unheard Edition, then you get it for free. Apparently it was for 6 months. I can't remember if they changed that, but you know, there's other alternate methods to do PvE in Tarkov, but I'm pretty sure they don't like you mentioning it, so for those that know, they know. But also there's the fact that this game will never leave early access, and I hope this doesn't age like milk, but if they do go into full 1.0 release, then I will start an OnlyFans and post feet pics, because for some reason that's something a lot of you have been wanting for a while, and that's only if they release. But on a more serious note, apparently it hasn't left early access is so it can circumvent refunds, apparently it's the word circumvent, but this game is a mess. But what redeeming qualities does it have? Well, I love the concept. It's absolutely awesome. Spawn into an abandoned area, loot what you can, defend yourself like everything you have on you depends on it, and extract. I won't lie, the exhilaration of finding a couple of basic items or a can of beans, getting a kill or two and extracting whilst in critical health just feels so rewarding. It's also the fact there isn't a definitive way to play the game, in the sense you can take things slow and play like a rat and get basic items and progress at your own rate, avoiding all firefights, or you can take your luck against the hackers and play for kills in hopes of getting good loot. But many years ago, I asked the impossible question. I believe the proper term is a rhetorical question, and that was how to have fun in this game. And I got multiple answers that ranged in legality, but I found the way. And that's just not to take it seriously. I honestly have more fun going in with only a pistol and trying to get some basic loot and extract as fast as possible. Sometimes I get good stuff and even a kill, but if I die, you know, who cares? It's not like I lost anything that's actually considered valuable. But based purely out of spite to the devs, I'm going to be putting it in F tier. And to the people that say I'm wrong, you know, type in Morse code in the comments, you know, so Nikita doesn't intercept your comments if you are calling out for help. But moving on, the next game is the most controversial one in terms of the setting, but let's try not to focus too much on that, but rather the gameplay instead, and that is none other than 6 Days in Fallujah. It was supposed to be released in 2009, but that was pushed back to 2023, where the state it was in was, I wouldn't say it was bad in terms of bugs, which is definitely a win given the current state of gaming, but it just had a lack of content. From memory, there was only 4 levels, which obviously meant quickly the player count dropped. Now there is more maps, and even with AI teammates, because trying to beat any of these levels as one person, or even with 2, is a pretty big challenge, because the AI isn't hard like Ready or Not, where the AI would absolutely obliterate you with little chance of returning fire, but they're hard in a smarter way, because they are able to set up ambushes, be more accurate if you use a flashlight in the dark, and I'm pretty sure they can even listen to you speaking over local chat, but don't quote me on that. And the local chat and radio chat is a really cool feature because your voices echo indoors, and if you want to use the radio, you won't be able to fire straight. It also adds this cool little radio effect over your voice to make those dramatic moments of being split up, pinned down a little more dramatic. Now, a really cool thing about this game is the procedurally generated levels. You can do the same mission over and over, and it will be different every time, making it feel fresh to some extent. And it can technically make each run a gamble whether the environment can work with or against you as you get bombed by mortars. I wasn't planning on bringing up player count too much, but for a game that was touted as this bad boy of a game that does glamorize a bad war, which it's a whole debate, don't come at me, but it has a surprisingly lower player count compared to similar games such as Ready or Not and 0 Hour. It's not a fantastic or great game, but I wouldn't say it's bad, because there's just something really entertaining about being pinned down by mortars and having to coordinate with your squad. It's fun, but the thing that I don't like about this game is just the way the weapons handle or just sound in general. If you look at Ready or Not, like I said, they're big and beefy, they're fun and pleasurable to fire, and the guns in 6 Days, they don't have that same effect, and it's such a nitpick, but I understand why they did that, because I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on this, at least I hope, that soldiers wear earmuffs or headphones, and it can kind of muffle the sound of weapons, which is why they sound damper in this game, which is the effect that they were going for, because real soldiers wear headphones or earmuffs, right? Because if they didn't, that would be a very big OSHA violation. But like I said, not a great game, but also not a bad game. It's fun to hop in every now and then with a couple of mates, and if you're especially bored with Ready or Not, it's good, but I'm gonna be putting it in C tier. The next game is for the men out there who thought Barbie dolls are for little girls, but look at their character in this and instantly start playing dress up, and that is Ground Branch. Now, I'm gonna be brutally honest, I treat it like Fallout 4. I enjoy all the pre-work, which is getting all my favorite mods, or in this case, customizing my character and weapon to look really cool, but when I actually play these games, I lose interest pretty quickly and go back to playing something else. Now, the reason for it is the multiplayer isn't that great, where most servers are PvE, and they say you need to use a mic, but that's not really guaranteed in my experience. But that's not to say you won't have some pretty tactical moments, but it's just a bunch of guys running around a map and shooting bots. It's the same in Insurgency. I don't really see that much of an appeal to be fighting hordes of AI, which I know can seem a little bit hypocritical given I said that 6 Days in Fallujah and Ready or Not were fun games, even though that's exactly what you do in those, but let me cook. I find the PvP game mode to be much more better and satisfying, but trying to find a server that actually hosts it can be a bit of a challenge, but I have done it in the past and it's much more fun and satisfying knowing you killed a real person and not a couple lines of code. Now, beyond the customization of your character, it extends to the maps you play in the sense you can pimp out how the bots act and have a fair couple of mods to play with, but the actual gameplay feel, I don't personally like it. The weapons and movement feel floaty, sort of reminding me of 0 Hour, and I find it cumbersome to play at times. Because the thing is, if I want a PvP experience, I'd much rather play Insurgency Sandstorm. If I want a PvE experience, I'd rather play Ready or Not, or once again, Insurgency, or even 6 Days in Fallujah, because they just feel a little better to play, and also you have that setting and story, whether you're a soldier in a foreign country or trying to bring law and order. Because in Ground Branch, I understand you're playing as a PMC or like some super secret Black Ops operator, but all of these games I'd recommend to my close friends in real life for a boys' night of gaming, but Ground Branch isn't something I would recommend to them, even though I nearly got scammed out of getting a couple Steam keys, which is a whole other thing, but that's why I'm putting it in D tier.
You're disrespecting a future US Army soldier.
The next game, or well, games should I say, is the World War I shooters. This includes the trilogy and the forgotten child of the modern tactical shooter space, Beyond the Wire, which I'm not actually going to count it, but I want to talk about it briefly. But let's start off positive and talk about these first. They're very basic, very simple. Run around, shoot people, and try to complete very basic tasks as a team. It's nothing too crazy other than experiencing the occasional war crime here and there, but while these games don't have, they don't have any communication at all, let's not kid ourselves, and it doesn't have much cohesion in terms of team play compared to others on the list, these games are just fun. Getting points for kills or spotting, being in a close range duel, and getting to feel immersed in a World War I setting. Sure, you can play Battlefield, but this is much more grounded and enjoyable, whilst also not requiring you to switch off your brain as much. I would put these in C tier simply because over time, while the graphics have improved, people aren't as happy as the more linear style Insonzo took compared to the other games in the series. And it's especially good for people who like RS2 but don't want something on a massive scale and want something set in a historical period that isn't like Insurgency. And this is a very good series of games to get into, even though, you know, yes, some of them are dead. Insonzo is still kicking, and I do recommend it, and I keep going back to it for the very reason that it's just a fun game. But then we have Beyond the Wire. I saw this YouTuber, I don't remember his name, who makes videos about dead games, and I'm just gonna say it, the idiot said RS2 is dead. It's not, but calling Beyond the Wire dead is a fact beyond reasonable doubt, and it's such a shame because the couple of times I did play it, I had a lot of fun. The sounds, the explosions, they were great, but yes, there were definitely a fair couple of issues, but I'm not gonna list them because it's kind of like beating on a dead horse at this point. But I will say the game is just weirdly shiny and reflective. It just looks really weird, but I look back at 2021 when I did play it with a weird sense of nostalgia, which is interesting because I look back at it fondly and I completely overlook the issues and criticisms, and I wonder if any of you also that played it feel the same way, because quite frankly it's gone for good, even though they implemented AI, which I thought was going to bring in at least a couple of players, but that didn't do it, and the bots are absolutely horrendous, and it's not something I recommend you buy at all. But to the people that did play it, then I'm sure we can look at it with some fondness. Now the thing is, I can't even put it on a tier because I can't get a refresher of what playing on a full server is like. However, I will still be putting it above Escape from Tarkov. But moving on, the next game doesn't have that much historical significance to me, but it does for Americans. In this game, you can express your feelings about your fellow countrymen in some very interesting ways. And that is none other than War of Rights. Now, the players in this game can be a double-edged sword depending on who you are. On one hand, they can be great, because without people taking leadership roles, this game is nothing. It feels so intense being heavily under fire and getting orders when to return the fire, when to hide, where to run, but I feel like it adds to the authenticity in the sense you have people in real life that reenact this war.
Come on! You're gonna be late for the Battle of Philippi!
But you have it in a game, and it sort of feels like those reenactments, except people actually get bludgeoned to death and die. Now, the bad thing is that if you are of a certain skin color, you might have a bad time because, well, just watch Nano's video and you'll know why. But despite that stuff, it's a fun game, despite being very slow paced, in the sense reloading your weapon is an utter pain. The movement can feel clunky, but every time I reinstall the game to give it another go, I always forget you have to reload when you spawn, and it's led to some very awkward moments to say the least. But goddamn, is it not awesome hearing those battle cries and then rushing in to beat your fellow countrymen with your weapon. Totally not because I forgot what the bayonet button was, but the game features historically accurate weapons and gear to add to that feel. But I'm not American, nowhere near. But I'm not gonna say I don't feel incredibly patriotic at the end of the game and that music is blasting. And it even shows you how the battle progresses, and it also has a little narration. It's cool. It's a cool game and honestly pretty fun, despite initially I thought it was going to be an absolutely terrible and a slog to play, but it's very dependent on who you play with, because if it wasn't for the players, then this game would be absolutely nothing. But honestly, I've had nothing but great fun with it, and I'm going to be putting it in B tier. But moving on to the game that is responsible for this entire channel, and the one I have the most hours in for good reason, which is why I regard it as the most enjoyable, satisfying, and engaging tactical shooter I've ever played, and that is Rising Storm 2 Vietnam and the Red Orchestra series. Why are they perfect for me? Well, it isn't too arcade-like, but it also isn't too hardcore and realistic. I find that it has the perfect balance of accessible realism. By incorporating fast-paced and engaging gameplay, in the sense you can sit in one campy spot all game and just send GIs to Virgin Mary with a simple, well-placed singular shot to the torso. Or you can run around like an absolute madman with a piece of farming equipment. It has explosives, napalms that can all be used to secure clutch moments, which was a very beautiful moment I captured on live stream a couple years ago. In the last moments, we got to the top of the hill, all thanks to an artillery barrage that knocked out a little too many friendlies, but it was worth it.
No! No! It's still got drop. It's still got drop. It's still got. Let's go!
Can't forget hopping in a Cobra and just dominating and making Viets feel absolutely helpless against this mechanical beast. And just the way the guns handle is so satisfying. And this applies to all of these games because they all have a functional brace mechanic that literally every other tactical shooter on this list can take inspiration from. And in Red Orchestra 2, you even have a cover system that's pretty damn cool. The bad aspects, especially with RS2, was the breaking of VoIP at the cost of bringing in many more long-term players with epic games. Despite the rose-tinted glasses, this game did have a fair amount of bugs that have been used to cheese the game, and there's one that I literally cannot show you. I know how to do it, I'll never use it, but the day the game hits a consistent 0 players is when I'll rise up from the grave myself and say, yeah, this is the exploit, little cheese mechanic that no one is allowed to know. But I also like the progression system. It locked key roles behind levels, and to show that you're a veteran and a high priority target, you could unlock some nice cosmetics. I don't think I will ever get the non-la, but you know, I have my own one in real life to make up for it, and if me and HexDK, great guy, you know, if we ever do have that fight we've been talking about, I will absolutely have him sign it. But while the prime years of these games are over, and if you are like me who got to experience at least one of these during said prime years, then I think we can all be proud and appreciative of what we got to experience. experience. But there is some news on 83 that I gotta do a whole separate video on, but the wheels are in motion. Like, they were in motion before, but they are absolutely speeding up now, which is getting ever so closer to the well-deserved sequel that we've all been waiting for. But oh yeah, easy S tier, non-negotiable. But moving on to a somewhat similar game, just set many years in the future, and that is none other than Insurgency. Now, both of these games, when compared, will cause the occasional squabble, and then you have the usually older gentleman rolls into these squabbles and calls everyone else wrong and says that the modern infantry combat mod is superior. I feel like I have to put that game's ghostly remains at S tier since it's actually impossible to play, but staying on topic of Insurgency 2014, it's a more grounded experience compared to its predecessor since you can't go too crazy on the customization, which does create a more serious experience. You have actual soldier looking guys running around the Middle East, opposed to the, heaven forbid, women in my tactical shooters like in Insurgency Sandstorm. But I also like the way the guns and movement feel, especially in Insurgency 2014, because the Source engine is an absolute beast. Fun fact, Titanfall 2 was made with the exact same game engine. While Insurgency's player count is alright, the actual servers are definitely interesting to say the least. That ranges from Russians running rings around you, complemented by the occasional Bliat, and then you have the Chinese servers which has hit markers. Yeah, the game has modding, which is great, but it can also be detrimental at times, depending on the selection of servers that are available. But moving on to Sandstorm, it offers better graphics, better animations, weapon sounds, which it adds in much more quality of life improvements, excluding some of the ridiculous amount of skins, and also the fact that the dev team got canned a while back. If I were to hop into one of these right now, I'd pick Sandstorm, quite frankly, because there's more players and I don't need to play on the sketchy Eastern European servers, so I would say the Sandstorm is more fun, especially with the quality of life improvements, but that's not to say both of these games aren't just incredibly awesome. But I'm gonna be putting the Insurgency series at A tier. But finally, we have the last game. I mentioned earlier this guy was the father of tactical shooters on a large scale because despite being around the longest, it's still alive and kicking both in player count and development. It's also responsible for kickstarting some of your favorite YouTubers' channels, and that is none other than Project Reality. Right off the bat, the graphics do complement its age, but if you grew up with Battlefield 2, you'll feel right at home. That of course doesn't mean your friends will feel the same way, because I got my casual friends to try it and one just kept having a mental breakdown.
I landed like 5-7 perfect shots directly on target into cunt's head. He didn't even get damage. I fucking hate this game. It just doesn't work.
And then my other friend, I think he was just trying to humor me by saying, yeah, you know, it's not bad, I don't mind it, you know, the graphics look a little shit, but you know, I'm having a good time overall, because such things we had to endure, the impossibility of trying to make a beach landing in a helicopter, and also the smite of the admins for God knows why. But I think he did eventually get into it, found it extra comical, you know, because he's, you know, Jewish and we were playing as Hamas, and I just thought it added to that experience a little bit. But I just love the variation in scenarios. 1 minute we were in the Middle East and the next we were jamming out to the Falklands theme, which is just such a good theme. Like, the soundtrack in this game is really damn good, but also that map, the Falklands, was an absolute meat grinder. It felt like World War I trench warfare, because we got stuck in our respective zones and any attempt to cross would get you obliterated. But you also have Grozny, which is just my favorite map. Just an absolute depressing hellscape that's just beautiful in a weird way. But do I really need to say much? It's a great game that does require much more teamwork, and it can be difficult at times, which is due to the language barrier, but I have encountered some Russian people who just start going off, and I'm like, hey, come on man, English please, and then he would try to like speak in broken English. Truly a heartwarming moment of geopolitical relations, but at least in my experience, when comparing it to Squad, like, if I had a choice between either on a boys' night out of gaming, Squad would be picked 9 times out of 10 unless I really managed to convince them to play Project Reality. But as an individual, I do like to hop in Project Reality every now and then and just, I don't know, the teamwork, the coordination, it just feels a little more intense and involved compared to Squad, and that's complemented by the game mechanics. Now, the thing is, People aren't going to be happy that I put Project Reality below Squad, but the key reason for that is I play Squad consistently. I play it with my mates. I have more fun in it, and it's a reason why I have over 300 hours in it. Now, when I compare that to Project Reality, sure, it might be more of a truer tactical shooter, but I don't have as much fun in it. And after all, this whole tier list is based on how much fun they are. But since we've covered almost every tactical shooter that I've had the pleasure of playing on this channel, I'm gonna disappear once again until I find the motivation that I had whilst making this, which will be in the form of a 20-minute or largely edited video, and none of that crap gameplay videos, because you boys and girls deserve quality, which I am hopefully or hoping to be able to develop and expand on. But nonetheless, my name is Tantu. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share the video with your friends, and click on the video that is on screen because I know you'll enjoy it. Anyways, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.